It's truck season at AJ Doman Chevrolet. Save thousands of all remaining 24 models and get financing as low as 5.9 for 84 months. Looking for a commercial truck? Come see us. We're your local business elite dealer with a huge selection of work-ready trucks in stock. No credit, bad credit, upside down. We say yes when others say no. AJ Doman Chevrolet at the foot of the Morgan City Bridge in Berwick.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Weissite, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us. However you may be joining us, we appreciate it very, very much. And always glad to welcome back into the studio State Senator Mike Fesi. Thanks for joining us today.
Glad to be here.
We appreciate it. Of course, District 20 for both Lafourche and Terrebonne parishes.
That's correct.
Which we're very glad that you represent us. Got this special session going on. And what are some of the things that they're going to tackle in this one?
Well, they worked hard on studying what's made other states such as North Carolina and Texas and all have everybody moving into the state rather than moving out.
Okay.
And Louisiana, we keep bleeding, just like my district itself, and redistricting, we lost 10,000 people.
10,000 people.
And so we got to stop the bleed, and so we got to get this stuff fixed. And one of the ways is everybody complains that you go to Louisiana, this tax system, it's not that we're too high, it's just too complicated. Okay. And so that's basically what this session is going to do, is try to uncomplicate our tax codes.
Wow. But what a unique perspective, too, because I think very often people just assume that taxes are too high, but it's because of the way that it's formulated and calculated. It's just too complicated.
Right. Well, okay. Over the years, we've added this one gets a deduction, but not this and this and that. So what they studied the rest of the states, and especially North Carolina, a lot of this stuff is taken from because they've had a tremendous increase in population over doing this over the period of time. And, simple things is inventory tax. Inventory tax is one of the reasons I wanted to run for Senate, because I was just tired of, the inventory tax and the franchise tax on businesses is hard to deal with. So they're working with trying to make cuts in certain spots, but charges in others that kind of make it an equal across the board, but make things a lot simpler.
Yeah.
I mean, franchise tax, a lot of people look at, well, what does that really do? Well, that hurts a lot of even businesses that are already here, because every time you borrow money, it raises the franchise tax raised.
Right, goes up.
So it goes up, and so it keeps you from wanting to borrow, a borrowing base to have that tax go up.
Right, and we need that. I mean, if we're going to grow at all, if any business wants to grow, you got to have monies to do it, and you got to very often borrow it.
That's right. And so, there's a lot of complications and a lot of what they're trying to do, but the simple thing is let's make it all simple again and not complicated.
And so, quite frankly, these are some of the tax reforms that they're going to address in this session, right?
Right.
They're going to kind of look at all of the different ways and places that have been taxed in the past and make that a little bit more uniform and much more simple.
Right.
Okay.
And the thing is that when we do any change, we're trying to make it neutral. So I've been working with Archie with Lafourche Parish and Jason with Terrebonne Parish. And, actually we had a discussion just yesterday and trying to put things together at the chamber. But, it's really trying to make everything a neutral change, but make it simpler.
Okay. I love that idea. I got to tell you, because for me, I've never understood it that much, but, not a local business owner, I wouldn't have known a lot of those things. And so I love that somebody like you, who's been a small and large business owner for years, says, wait a minute, somebody's got to address this. And so you've been fighting for a long time.
To get rid of that franchise tax.
Right.
Yep.
And so is there anything that we can do to kind of improve this tax code that makes us more responsible and more competitive? And that's basically what this is, right?
Yeah, basically, every change is basically to make us more competitive and to make things simpler. And some of the things they're adding, we're going to get some heartburn over, because we're going to put sales tax on certain services that's not there, but other states are doing it.
Right.
But, just like I look at, everybody says, well, there's no income tax in Texas, but their property tax is a lot higher.
Right.
But they got a lot, their schools are tremendous and everything else. So it depends on where we want to put our money to make it work.
Right. And how we find the balance. And I love that idea. We're not just trying to make things simpler. We're also trying to find some balance with it.
Correct.
Because we can make it simple, but more expensive. And then, and I'm thinking about people who are coming in, we want to attract new business, but we also want people to retire here too.
Correct. And my thing is we want to attract new business, but don't give them incentives over the guys that's been here paying the till the whole time.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we got to make sure we take care of who's been taking care of us at the same time. And that's my biggest push, is to make sure that we give incentives just to the people, all the businesses that's been here struggling through it, and make sure they have just as much effort to move forward.
Right. Don't start taxing them harder, those who have been carrying the load.
That's correct.
To make it easier for somebody else.
That's correct.
Any particular changes that you're looking forward to and voting for?
Well, the biggest thing is we got to see what the fiscal notes are. So once we get into the meat of it, then we'll hopefully make some common sense decisions to make it right. So till we get it laid out, and then that's why the session's a little longer than expected, but it gives us time to read through every bill and make sure we're making the right decisions. Also to hear from all our constituents to see if they have a problem with it. Actually, I got a meeting after this to talk about the inventory tax.
Okay.
So, to make sure we're going to make the right decision.
I got you. And the other thing is, I know I've seen pictures of how thick that binder is. and look, it's like one of those, hey, review this and we'll get started soon.
That's it.
And so that's one of those difficult things. I know you got to familiarize yourself with each of these proposed ideas. And again, I love the idea that y'all are going to spend a little bit more time talking about what makes sense.
That's
and
correct.
It's a really important factor, right? Because
Well,
if you don't have enough time to think about it on the front end, but to talk about it and make sense of it, then we're kind of rushing the system. We don't want to do that. And so we'll need to take a short break. We appreciate you sticking around. We'll talk a little bit more about things that are happening in your area, some things that your people are telling you. Talk a little bit about the election that's coming up.
Okay.
All right,
Sounds
very
good.
Big Mike, we appreciate you being here. All right, guys, we appreciate you as well. So don't go anywhere. A whole lot more with our state senator when we return. Thank you.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by South Louisiana Bank. It's better when we bank together. Waits and Downer, attorneys at law. Terrebonne Ford, built Ford tough.
Hello and welcome back to this edition of Bayou Time. Again, your host, Keith Weissite, licensed clinical social worker with Terrebonne Home Care. Very glad you're joining us, however you may be joining us. We appreciate it, and very glad to still be with us here. State Senator Mike Fesi, thanks again for being here.
Glad to be here.
All right. I have trouble not saying Big Mike. I know a lot of them do, but Mike, we're glad you're here. District 20, Lafourche and Terrebonne parishes, talking about this session. We talked a little bit about it on the last segment, but going into the special tax reform session, one of the other things that you mentioned at the very end was the communication that you guys will need in session, but coming out of session, be really important to let everybody know what was decided and what these bills really mean.
Correct. Because, everybody in the state needs to really pay attention, because it's going to be on the ballot in March. And so all this work that we put into it, we need to make sure we communicate with all the constituents out there that's going to be voting in March to make sure that we get this thing passed, because, we don't want to have all this effort go to waste. And so we want to make sure you understand what you're voting on.
Right. And as especially in an effort to simplify some of these tax issues and this tax reform, we want to make sure that people see it as a simplification.
Correct.
And something that's worth voting for.
And we're trying to make it as neutral as possible.
Right.
And so, that's going to be the biggest thing, the biggest thing that we got to get across to everybody. We're trying to make it as most neutral as possible, and that it's going to be good for the state to bring an economic boom to the state and make things even that much, maybe make Texas go down.
Yeah. We're all right with the surrounding states going down a little bit, right? If we can build up a little bit. And nothing against them, but we're about building Louisiana and building a stronger Louisiana.
And that's the whole reason we have the states and the way they're set up for competitive moves.
That's exactly right. And so speaking of, what are some of the things that you're hearing from in your area? What are some of your constituents telling you that are big issues for them?
Well, the big issues is mainly on the federal side is immigration, illegals, and all the violence and everything. In fact, I had a bill to stop illegals from driving on Louisiana highways and couldn't get it out of committee. And we've had 3 of our constituents get killed in just the past few months here in my district. And we really need to work hard on making sure we do the right move in the federal elections.
Well, you know, it's one of those things that, sadly enough, maybe it takes the loss of life from 3 constituents for people to pay attention to the necessity of that bill.
Yeah, because
it's sad, but maybe that's the case.
Because and I'll kind of bring it out. I mean, the head of the committee told me we need to be nice to those people. It's not that I want to be mean to those people. It's I want consequences for those, because driving drunk, there's no consequences for illegals.
Right.
Because they're not supposed to be driving anyway. No, There's no accountability. There's nothing.
Right.
And so we need to change that game, and we need to pay attention to what we're talking about. It's not to be mean to anybody. It's about being a common sense and making sure that they have consequences if you're going to drive drinking.
Well, look, as illegal, as somebody who is here in the United States and a resident of Louisiana, I got to have my license. I got to have my car up to date. I got to have everything right for myself legally.
And you will be prosecuted if you drive drunk.
And if I have one drink.
And so they're not prosecuted, and they know that. They get away with it.
Yeah, and that's
so we got to change that game.
Right. I agree with you 100%. I'll be glad to fight that fight because, I've known people who have been killed over the years by illegals, and I didn't realize that there was no accountability for those individuals. We don't want them driving in Louisiana. You know what? Just like we want to bring in people, bring in businesses, we want to keep retirees, we want to keep out those people that know that they're going to be held accountable for their actions.
And bring in the ones that want to come legally.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I know that leads right into, borders and Border Patrol and some of those issues. Election next Tuesday. Any of your constituents kind of talking to you?
Yeah, I mean, everybody I'm talking to know how important this election is. I think that, and I'll go out and say, if Trump doesn't make it in, I'm scared for the country.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot of division between the leadership styles of the Republicans and the Democrats.
Right. Well, it's going back to accountability.
Right.
I mean,
or lack thereof.
It's like I said, to see what's happening across our country and the violence that's taking place and letting 13,000 murders that were convicted in other countries just run free in our country is just unbelievable.
Yeah. And we've got to find some way to manage that and do that better. And one side is focused on doing that. The other is not.
Correct.
That we know of. That's their platforms,
right,
as it is. Some thoughts about how it's going to finish?
I think that he should win with a landslide, and we should take the Senate and the House of Representatives if we know what's good for us.
Right. And so, as a Republican, we understand and appreciate that, but for the right reasons. It's not just about standing on one side or the other, but for what you believe in and what's best.
Absolutely not. This is for the American people. I was a Trump delegate at the convention, and that's what was discussed the whole time, is making sure we make the country back safe. We get the whole world back in order. The world's falling apart.
Right.
And we have to be a leader to make sure that doesn't happen like it was. He was in for 4 years, and they didn't have one war break out.
Yeah, and now here it is in the last for we've had several.
Yeah, and we've had many Americans killed for no reason, and and I can't believe what happened in Afghanistan. That's a whole nother story.
Right, another show, if you will. Senator, we appreciate your time as always. Thank you for your leadership, what you do for our area and for the state, and we look forward for some good outcomes. Look forward to having you back.
I'll be glad to be back.
All right, we appreciate that. All right, guys, that will do it for this particular segment and this Bayou Time. But don't go anywhere. I got a whole lot more right here on HTV.
Today's social media segment is brought to you by Alford and Associates for all of your insurance needs. CIS, Cardiovascular Institute of the South, the highest quality cardiovascular care available. Barker Honda, the Barker family tradition of quality.